All right, welcome everyone back to Best People, Best Place. I'm really excited to be talking to Richard Godfrey. Richard's got a great story of, I say, one company he built, but really there's a whole bunch of companies that he's helped build in the tech world, but also just from how he built the people around it. Richard, thank you for being on. Really appreciate you coming from all the way on the other side of the world to talk.
Thank you, Matt. Lovely to be here. And I can't wait to have a chat through this.
Awesome. Well, hey, first thing I want to talk about is do us a quick favor. Just give a quick update on with Rocketmaker, who you are, what you do, what your story is. Just, again, a quick version of it. You can talk about your dog if you want. I don't care. Give me some content of who you are and what you do.
Great. Well, let's kick off with the dog. The dog is 10 years old, and she's doing pretty well still. But Rocketmakers is 14 years old, so we kicked it off. And we are, as a company, we're based in the UK, based in the southwest of the UK, actually, in a lovely place called Bath, which is one of the World Heritage Cities of the world. So it's a beautiful place to be. If any of your listeners have not been there, come and see Bath when travel gets a little bit easier and stuff. So we've been based out of the southwest, and that's kind of for a reason. I mean, I like it here, but a lot of people sort of are transitioning out of London out into the southwest of the UK. It's a place that has got loads of opportunity for sort of startup businesses and scale-up businesses. It's sort of number 2 outside of London in the UK, and that just provides great opportunities. And our business, we kicked it off 2007, just before the financial crash. We kind of managed to model our way through that. We actually created our own first startup, which was a self-publishing startup. So we had 3 techies building a startup. It didn't go well. Let's just be honest and say that. But we learned a lot. We learned that it took us 3 times more money. It took us 3 times longer than we thought it was going to do. We realized that you make something and people will come. Well, it just doesn't work like that. You give people loads of choice, it just paralyzes them in things. So there were a whole set of things that just factored in us getting it very, very badly wrong. But the great thing about getting things wrong is you learn. And if you take that attitude, and I think we really genuinely did that, we got to the end of it and we built a business that fundamentally none of us wanted to run. And that was a kind of a big moment for us that said, well, actually, why would we do that? And then we kind of looked back at it, retrospective on it, and said, well, the interesting bit for us was that creative process, the coming up with an idea, finding the problems, solving the problems through technology, and building something amazing. That's where the true value of Rocketmakers we were called I principles at the time, actually. It was the time when everything that was cool had an I in front of it. Do you remember the iPhone was just coming out, and we thought, turns out that isn't the case now. So we kind of transitioned into Rocketmakers, which is now a much better brand for us. So basically we ended up looking at ourselves, realizing that we'd created a startup that we didn't really want to run, but actually we loved that creative process. So we said, well, why don't we work with other creative, interesting startup businesses who do want to run the company afterwards? But why don't we do the bit of that we're really, really good at? So the last 10 years or so, we've really been focusing around startups and then scale-ups and then corporate innovators who want to kind of behave like startups and help them create their products.
That's awesome. And it's funny you say corporates who want to behave like startups, right? We get that all the time with our clients where they're just like, we just want to be more agile. Right. Well, the problem is you got 4,000 employees, right? It's hard to be agile, but the way you do it is segmenting your company and really doing what you guys do for the people. And that's really what allows you to be agile. You are as agile as the individuals that I think work with you. We worked with the United States Air Force, 4,000 people at the academy. Was when I first saw a unit move as one, was with 4,000 people at lunchtime when they all sat down at the same time and no one told me it was time to sit down and I'm the only person standing up. Right. It was kind of this eye opener. So seeing that ability to be agile is huge. So let's dive into these sections. We, like we always do, I don't want to say went behind your back, but went right to your employees to find out how does Richard and his team really do this and do they really do it well? We know you've been recognized to be a great place to work. We know you've been recognized as a very innovative workplace, which is so impressive, especially when you're in a city like you're in and in an area like you're in. It's not like you're in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of competition out there. So first section is growing your employees, right? The actual tactical positioning of the employees doing their job better. We sponsor this by LifePulse, which is a consulting company. that works internationally to help individuals connect structure and intention in order to get whatever desired results that we want. So let's talk about the actual employees. One of your employees, and I'm going to need some reasoning why they said this, well over a decade into their career, this is the 4th place that they ever worked, and they have no interest in ever, with capital ever, going anywhere else because the work is interesting, challenging, and I'm able to step out of my comfort zone and learn new things. The reason I ask you why someone said this is because people pay us a lot of money to get people to say this exact thing in their company. Why would somebody in your company literally be craving to be challenged? What is it you're doing that's making your employees like not just go where they need to be, but want to be challenged more?
Well, that's news to me, so it's always great to hear that kind of thing, Matt. So that's fantastic. I think it's about having that opportunity to do interesting new things, and I think one of the things that we've doubled our headcount in the last year or so, and I think it's a lot to do with the opportunity of having a few things. So we kind of we work with a lot of interesting businesses, and I suppose there are 3 things that I'm always looking for in the types of projects that we do, and I think that factors into what people like about it. So the first thing is innovation. So there has to be something in a project that we take on that we think is truly innovative, and that doesn't have to be the technology. It doesn't have to be some latest, 6G blockchain machine learning thing that's there, but it has to be something. It could be the business model that's just changing something in there. So there has to be something that's genuinely innovative in what we're looking at. The second thing is I call it quality, but it's kind of hard to gauge. The way I like to think about it is if you're going to build something, you want to make sure that you build the right thing, and then you build it right. So essentially, it's thinking about how do we make sure. Let me take a step back. Because we work with startups, a lot of startups fail. And the nature of it is that can be pretty demoralizing if you're in a company working for startups and the work that you do doesn't see the light of day, or maybe it doesn't see the millions of users that you anticipated at the start to do that. And if you do a few of those, it's pretty demoralizing. And actually, you don't want to be doing the next one. So I would rather our team kind of push back and say, well, let's build the right product. And let's not spend the time doing the development process if we didn't feel like we'd been through the right design process and tested it with real users and understand that there is a true business model there. So that kind of build the right product is really about user experience design, visual design, testing things, prototyping with real customers to try and get something that is, you think as much as possible is going to work. And then building the product right is really about, once you're there, let's think about the quality of the product that's out there. So people want to be proud of what they create, and that quality element is that. So innovation number 1, quality number 2, and then the third part is really about having a purpose. So pretty much everything that we do is driven by a bigger social, economic, environmental purpose that's there. And we work with lots of different sectors in different ways. So we're not just focusing on only things that are charitable or whatever, but we are thinking for profit, but how does this project make the world a better place in the process?
Yeah.
And I think when you combine that focus on types of projects for the type of people that we want to hire and the culture that we want to have inside Rocketmakers, it kind of blends itself and kind of works. And hopefully that's that combination that you're hearing from one of our people, which is around, if you can create those 3 things in pretty much everything we do, it's a great place to be.
I love build the right product and build it right. And one thing that you say that I hear multiple guests on this podcast say and bring up is you're selective of the work you force your people to do. And force is an aggressive word, but that's how most people do it. It's like, hey, here's business, deal with it. And instead, it's like, hey, here's business, you get to work on this. And it seems as if from what your employees have responded to and what you're saying is they're eager for the next project because it's something new, it's something innovative. And I think it's so fascinating to hear people in your position thought of as a great place to work is you're not just focused on getting stuff done, top line, getting things moving. You're focused on getting the right things going that will get your team moving and keep them moving. And because of that, top line, bottom line, all the lines that you want go up. So that's really, really interesting. I love that line. Thanks for sharing that. All right, you ready for the next one? You like how this works so far?
This is going great so far, Matt. This is going great. Keep the positive feedback coming.
Hey, that's all we got. We don't get negative. But all right, so let's talk about working in your place, meaning actually getting there, people being in your environment. And I'm a big believer of, look, you get a foosball table, a ping pong table, and a kegerator. That doesn't mean you have culture. That means you have space, right? like what do people actually get from it? One person said that we recruit new crew members, which is awesome. I love when they use terms that are obviously part of being on a rocket ship, right? Like that was not an unintentional word they used or you have put in them. So we recruit new crew members based on the character, attitude, and aptitude rather than the tick box of skills. Again, this is not a manager. This is an employee answering this. The fact that your employees understand how you all recruit people. Walk me through that, how you're building that and why you think that's so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's largely comes from my background. I worked in some of the big consultancies and some multinationals, and quite often that recruitment process is around, did you go to the right school, or did you complete some test, technical test, particularly efficiently, or could you work out some algorithm that's there? And there's elements and some roles where that's applicable, I think. But in most roles, and certainly, I would say probably 99% of what we do, the most important thing is finding the attributes in the people who want to learn and develop new things. So and I think that's one of the ways that we think about it is if we genuinely are looking at innovative quality stuff, then we've got to expect the environments, the technologies, the languages that we're using to change, and they're changing even more rapidly than ever. And I've got the grey hairs to show it in software development. It's too fast for me to stay up with really these days,
right?
But that's a good thing for people that are really engaged in this. But so if you think the technology is going to change every 18 months or so that's there, what you don't want is to hire somebody who can do the technology for 18 months. What you want to do is hire somebody who's got the capability, the passion, the interest, desire, the drive to learn the next thing and understand that. And not everybody in the business can always be looking out at what the next thing is. So you have to have a real mix of people and interests and that diversity in the organization that has that different levels of interest and engagement around it.
That's awesome. And you never outdate if you have a work ethic, right? Like you're not outdated. You're able to work through it. So it's great. And it's also, I just love the fact that your employees recognize, they know that you're not going to put a slug next to them, right? They're going to put someone there that they can get around with, get along with, and actually work through, not just the next thing who's the fastest developer or the most creative developer. That's just part of it. And when you're building a sustainable organization, then people are important. And it's important for the people to know that you value the other person you're going to put next to them.
Yeah, and I think also the relationships between people is really important. And actually, people talk about sort of companies being sort of families and that stuff. And I'm not sure I go quite that far, but if to me, it needs to feel like everybody's got your back. And actually, if you don't know something, then you can ask the question without ever worrying that somebody's saying, this guy doesn't know this or whatever. It's actually how do you get to understand, to implement things as fast and learn as quickly as possible, and that's by doing it as a group thinking process rather than relying on individuals to hit the Google results all the time.
And you guys have doubled in size over the last year. So for your employees to be saying this, meaning you're not going back on how you built this thing, right? A lot of companies are like, we take time in hiring. All right, well, now you got to double in size. All right, well, hurry up. Let's get some bodies and seats because we need people we can bill hours to our clients and get things moving, which would be, from the way you've built your entire business, wildly detrimental to your business, right? It might help short term, just like if they were skilled in a short term current type of technology. But in the long term, if it's a one-trick pony, you're spending a lot of money without getting a result.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also trying to understand the balance of the team and, people with senior skills, mid skills, junior people coming in and trying to understand that there's a good mix that you can create in terms of the overall structure of teams to make it really effective.
Yeah. One thing I found with companies like you, and we asked this question on how does your company invest in you professionally? I can tell the success of a company and their employees based on how people answer this. And usually it's either, I don't know, which is bad. They don't, which is really bad because that means that the employee is upset, or they're very clear on what happens. So one of the answers we got is that everyone has a professional development mentor. And we heard this a couple of times from people. Walk me through what this is. They say it's a peer, but like elaborate on this idea that you have that you offer to your team.
Sure, yeah. So we have a very sort of flat structure in the business. So to give us a sense of scale, we're 54 people now, and but actually, there really isn't that kind of middle management structure defining things. So a lot of what we do is working on projects. So we have project managers and people are engaging around projects with that.
Yeah.
But that leaves some areas where you've got that kind of project team and that peer relationship with your project. You have somebody who's organising that as a project manager, but they're not sort of line manager to you. So therefore, we have how do we fill the gap of where people want to go in their careers and develop in areas? And we found that actually there's two types of mentoring that are really relevant in organisations like ours. One is understanding the technology deeper and having that kind of somebody you can go to ask technology questions to and get answers to develop that.
Right.
This isn't that. So the mentoring here is just purely about how do we have a meeting with a mentor at least once a month, which is trying to understand where somebody wants to go in their career, and actually understanding that some people are great at doing they have a really clear, I've got a 5-year plan, this is where I'm going. Other people just don't think about this stuff at all. And just having this kind of framework in place where we just touch base with it and say, are you heading in the right direction? Are there things that potentially could be done to make sure that works? And again, for me, this is about understanding that everyone's different in their business and some people want to develop in very different ways. I've also seen, a lot of organizations that I've worked with, this kind of idea of glass ceilings where, you kind of have to, if you're a technologist, you have to become a manager of some sort just to keep moving through the organization. And we don't do that kind of stuff. So it's just having opportunities for people to say, I've seen what somebody's doing over there. I'd love to give that a go, and providing a way to transition. And we had, I'm not sure who you heard from, but we had one example recently where somebody's gone through being a developer with us for some years, and then they kind of thought, well, I really fancy doing more sort of product ownership around things. But actually, in order to do that, I need to do some more project management stuff. So they kind of moved from a developer into a project manager, now into a product owner kind of role.
Interesting.
And having that ability to voice that interest and then to get some support around doing it, I think is kind of hopefully what you've been hearing from people.
Yeah. Couple things. Company stand up. What is that came up a couple times. So walk us through company stand up with your employees, because we're going to jump into how we help the people.
Yeah.
Right. But what this came from was, hey, we're all coming back into the workforce or workplace. We're doing this. It looks like you do it twice a week. I don't know if that's accurate, but we're doing it twice a week. And it just gives a room to laugh in a time that kind of no one knows how to act. Right. And comedy has always been kind of a cure for the awkward situations in life. So walk me through, what is that? Where'd that come from? What do you see from it? Why is it worth your time?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's been a really interesting journey, that one for me. It kind of, our business has always been around having the people in the same room as each other.
Yeah.
So we haven't had an extended workforce. We don't outsource anything. It's kind of people are in, and they used to be in the same space all the time. And that was really, the discussions that you'd get, the fluidity of ideas and things would be fantastic in that. And then, of course, the big C-19 hits, and we, March 17th is ingrained on my mind, because that's when we made the call in some businesses in the UK to send everybody home. And that suddenly changed the whole world for us. And I didn't know, because, and pretty much everybody else. I mean, we just didn't know how anybody would operate without that being in an office and working together. Turns out everybody worked really well, and I think the adrenaline kicked in, and it was kind of productivity didn't really drop, and it kind of looked really good. So, but one of the things that was really clear to me from day one of that was actually we're no longer just having that face-to-face time. So what we did was we put in every day we would have a company get together at midday where everybody would just turn up, and we'd basically just kind of do, in software development, we do often things called stand-up meetings, which is kind of what did you do yesterday? What are you doing tomorrow? What's blocking you? Just to give you an idea of those things. So we started it kind of like that, and went through. And now these days, the way it's set up is kind of transitioned now, not for 5 days a week. We've actually down to 2 days a week. We have one. A Monday is kind of a jovial get-together where somebody in the team takes it on and we'll do a game show or something and just have a way to engage people. And then on a Wednesday every week we'll have a company meeting, which is basically just telling everybody what's going on in the company, complete transparency of what we're doing, why we're doing it, who we're working with, and getting people to have that opportunity to see each other. Because and now we're in this kind of sort of transition of some people in the office, some people at home. And it's, I think it's just as important. And I suppose the biggest thing for me was saying to the team that this is the most important meeting of the week. So whatever you're doing, you talk to a customer, you tell them that you're on this stand-up call every week, and actually you don't miss it. And your video's on and you're engaged in it. And what it helped us do was really understand where people were struggling a bit. Where people were stuck in their bedrooms and actually just having that check-in point and a real conversation with real people has been really helpful. We're also doing something that we're calling donuts, which is just a random sort of meshing of people together.
I like donuts.
We do that as well, which is fantastic because you just don't talk about work, but it allows people to get to know each other. And when we've doubled the company size, both of these things have really helped in people getting to know other people around the business that they perhaps even wouldn't do if they were in the same space.
That's awesome. All right, here's another one that was super interesting to me, right? Well, look, we do this all the time. So like when I get new things, I'm like, ooh, we got to talk. Accountability chart with various seats, right? The fact that there's everything ranging from green seat, culture seat, various engineering disciplines, and it switches, it seems like. Is that correct? So walk me through this. What is this strategy, technique, and the results? What are you getting from doing this?
Yeah, it's almost like when most people have an organization chart, we've taken I started looking at a framework called EOS, and in terms of us scaling our business, we wanted something to work around. So I read a few books. I came across a book called Traction. Read that, and
I think it's right here.
Great, and it used this EOS process, and it was one of those experiences for me where I kind of read the book and I didn't really learn anything in terms of the individual pieces. But putting it all together had a real potential effect, I felt. And one of the things in there is around accountability charts. And for us, this is about creating seats that are the things that are needed in the business. So it's almost like a forward-looking organizational chart as much as anything. And saying, these are things that matter to us. We need to have somebody who's responsible for this. And actually, if you're going to do something like we're at the moment we're just in the process of going through sort of reorganizing the structure of our business to become a B Corp. And one of the things that is important in that is how we deal with sustainability and those things. So we needed a green seat. So, which is basically that seat then is responsible for making sure that sustainability and economic foundation of things is in everything that we do. And then we kind of ask around who's passionate about this, who's got the capability to do it, and then we push that together. And that might be that somebody has it for 3 months. It might be that somebody has it for 3 years. It's really about just making sure that somebody has it and is thinking about that throughout the business.
And it gives ownership to them, which brings a whole different level of value. So let's jump into how we grow the people, right? And it's so fascinating because every single thing you just talked about was very almost, well, not you talked about, your employees talked about, was tactical, right? It was very business connected versus individual. This one, we actually support a youth program that we've supported for years called Eagle University. And this section is all about helping the employees as an individual. And Eagle U helps youth 15 to 24 go get a 7-year career head start at a college campus, inviting people from all over the world. And I love hearing when companies like you really pour into their people. And one of the ones I want to go into was one of your employees. We asked, what does your employer do for you? Right. Which is a pretty broad question. And one said that they had a really rough period where they were wildly stressed in a way that they needed a break. And what they said was you and the CTO came in and, you know, you basically gave them time off. You're like, hey, you're at your limit, go relax and come back when you're ready. That is something that I think is overlooked. And you said this also in one of your stand-ups, is you get a gauge of what's going on in people's world, right? Are you stuck in home? Are you okay? And if you're not okay, what do we need to do? Because we don't want to give you a great project if you're not able to deal with it and it negatively impacts you, right? Especially with all this stuff. So walk me through, and I don't need that specific case, but there's other cases like that, or you want to use that case, but just what goes through your head when somebody says, I'm stressed, and you say, oh, well, let's just take some time off. A lot of people listening to this would go, what do you mean you're stressed? This is the job. Just do it. Walk me through your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously there's different levels of stress and generally mental health and physical health in employees. And everybody says employees are our greatest asset, et cetera, et cetera. And my view is, unless you really believe that, they aren't. And actually, right, if you do really believe that, then you've got to deal with the situations that real people individually have and expect those things. And I think one of the culturally, it's I talked a little bit about sort of helping other people, and if you think about that, it's a lot about, if somebody really is struggling, then how does everybody else around them help take the load off that and deal with it. And I think that's where we've been really, really successful in the hiring process of people, is talking to them about some of these sorts of things in early on and getting an understanding of that. And if ultimately it's if somebody's really badly stressed or troubled with their mental health, what's the end result of that? They have a breakdown. They're off work anyway for a long period of time, etc. How does that help the business? If you can see these things early, if you can help and contribute in the right ways, then I don't know why you wouldn't do that, frankly.
Exactly. And I think it's so interesting what you say is a lot of people, it's not even about, I mean, yes, the reason I think you do it, just from hearing you talk and listen to what your employees say, is because you're a good person and you care about these people who are working for you. But let's take that away and let's assume you were just a cold-blooded business person. Right now, like you said, us as managers or owners, we're the last to know what's going on if we don't keep our ear to the ground. And the way we keep our ear to the ground is ask the right questions, do the stand-ups, do these things you do. And I find it so interesting how people sit there and go, I can't do what Richard's doing. Why? Well, because I'm too busy dealing with all these surprise issues that I have with my personnel. And I'm sitting there going, you're going to invest in your people whether you want to or not. You either invest in them up front or you invest in them forever. And what it sounds like you're doing is you're getting in front of everything, which is, again, and we're seeing it in these answers of what people are saying. One person says this, I don't believe there's an organization out there that would ever be as great a place to work. This comes across every day from every single team member. Now, look, these people, I don't even tell you their names because that's not why we want them saying this stuff, right? But the fact that your employees of 50 plus people, which is not a small company, right? And you're growing through a very traumatic time. I can't understand how this is not a massive positive ROI, your time to dollar on what you're investing in these people. And then obviously they love the branded clothes. So whatever you're doing, you must be getting comfy shirts for your people. Let's talk about flexibility. It seems like that's a big trend that came up, was that you're flexible in how they work, where they work, when they work. And it could be because of what's going on with the environment. And it's funny because what you said was you loved having everyone in the workplace. But what you also do is you listen to what your people need. You listen to what your clients need. You listen to what they need, and then you serve based on their needs. One issue that I know a lot of people are dealing with as they're listening to this is knowing what to force their employees to do. Do we force everyone to come back in? Do we force everyone to stay home? Do we do a hybrid? Do we offer some, offer half? And what this person says is what you guys want them to do is do whatever they can in order to be as productive as they can. How do you ensure or trust that people aren't going to take advantage of that for those who might be a little bit more nervous in giving that freedom?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely a journey for us. As we don't have any silver bullets around any of this for sure, and I think we're just learning. I talked to another organisation a bit bigger than ours recently, and they said they made a conscious decision not to make any decision on this kind of hybrid working and approach, and I kind of like that. I think it's just it's too early to kind of make a call. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. It's whether we're pulling people back to work in some countries or sending them home in others and stuff. There, we don't know where this is going to end up. And actually,
right.
Therefore, what do you have to make a decision on at the moment? And fundamentally, in my view, it's kind of how do you not make a decision? Well, you don't make a decision by trusting the people that you employed. And if you employed them because based on a culture of trust and openness and self-starting and learning, etc., then let them do their stuff. I mean, people always talk about hiring people better than you and stuff, and I think that sort of servant leadership approach works really, really well with this. It's if you genuinely believe the people that you've hired are great at their jobs or can be great at their jobs, then why wouldn't you give them the freedom to prove that to you? And I think where you work, I think we're definitely seeing some situations where it would be way better to have people in the office still.
Right.
And there's other situations where it just doesn't make any difference whatsoever. One good example of that is when we first opened our office up again, and we had a couple of developers who were sitting next to each other, and I was just sitting further back in the office and just kind of observing a little bit, and they literally were talking to each other for 20 seconds every 5 minutes, and it really hit me square on that for the last 12 months we haven't been doing any of that stuff, right? So there's times when it kind of really makes sense, and then there's times when frankly anybody could do anything, and as a developer sometimes you want to be talking and understanding and sharing ideas, other times you want to have your headphones on and shut off, so why not be at home doing that and look after your dog at the same time.
All right, so let's talk about dogs because someone brought this up, right? I didn't even realize it was going to come back up again, right? I asked them, how does your how do they invest in you as a people? How does your company invest in you as a people? And they say the opportunity to subscribe to Borrow My Doggy. Okay, there's firsts for everything. This has never been talked about on the show. What is this? I think I know. But tell me it's true and let me know how it's worth. Again, like investing in us to come in as a consultant, we have an ROI that we can track and say, here's how much money we've saved, made, whatever. This is a very unique way to invest in your people. Walk me through why you do it and how it's worth doing.
Well, I guess there's a whole load of things which people like doing. And so, I think that kind of social engagement stuff is how you start to really understand who you're working with, and so we do lots of stuff which are all driven by individual employees that have a passion for it. So, for example, we have a master chef where we have one guy who used to be a professional chef teaches other people how to make interesting dishes and shares that. So once a month we'll have an evening where when we refitted our office, we made sure we had an oven in there, and we've now we can bake and do that kind of stuff. We have other people that go out running. I run a secret juggling club, which is in the business. But some people just love that kind of freedom of being able to. They don't have a dog. We don't have the ability to bring dogs into the office, so It's just an opportunity to help somebody out who perhaps needs to get their dog to have a walk. It's a way of giving back in some respects, but it's also a way of enjoying sort of the mental health release of looking after a dog for an hour.
That's so, again, and I love hearing you talk about, you put an oven in, not because it develops apps quicker or brings in more clients. It's because it's part of who, like you're building this this living organism that is this company that's made up of other living organisms, and we need to serve the organisms, right? It's like if you never, gave the body the food it needed to actually do what the body's supposed to do. And that's why I think you have hit such success with this. And even more importantly, one of the things that we try to explain to all of our clients is, look, external factors that we blame all of our failures on, especially something like COVID, all of your competitors are probably experiencing similar external issues. It's what's going on internally that's going to let you win, right? Or let you go past, or let you thrive through crazy times. So having that oven, right? Having these things, although no, I don't know if it's going to get you the next sale, but I guarantee you it's helped you thrive through this crazy time where other people are trying to figure out, where's my next food, coming from. So it's just fascinating hearing new ways of doing that. Somebody said summer party. What is summer party? And how do I get invited?
So summer parties, historically, it always used to be around at my house. Until the company got too big to do that. But it's basically just making sure that we share some time with partners of people that work together, and that they get to know each other as well, and start to create that relationship. Because you spend so much time at work with people that you have as colleagues. There's often you spend more time than you do with other family members, and actually, it's really nice sometimes to be able to create opportunities for just those people to meet and do it. We had for some time we had something a knitting group, which was mainly driven by partners of people, but actually gave them an opportunity to get together at least once a month.
That's awesome.
And do it. And frankly, lots of people who had very little interest in knitting or just wanted to learn how to do it would go along and engage in it. So.
That's so fun. And again, I always, when I hear ideas like that, I can hear the pushback that people will give on that. Do we really want our spouses to connect like that? Like, what if drama comes in and issues come in? And where a lot of this comes back to is one of the first questions that we brought up was when somebody said, I know who they're hiring, right? And most people will be similar to the person they are tied to, right? And I think it's just fascinating that when you do it, when you build it and build it right, like you said, you can do all these fascinating, fun things that other people are a little nervous to do because you took the time in the beginning to do it. So I just think it's so cool to see the fruits of what you do with this. All right. So answer me this question. And you've already given me a lot of these, so give me a different one if you could think of it. But what's one thing that you've done that no one could read in a book? Anything else and again, we've pulled a lot of interesting things out of you. So I apologize I should have thrown this one on you first, but anything interesting that we've missed that you think we need to hear about?
I think you could read any of the stuff that we do in a book, probably. But I guess it's, I don't know. I think what. Yeah, I can't think of anything that would be in a book. But one of the things that really matters to me is that treating people as you want to be treated. And I think you'd read that in many, many books. But actually, that is how a lot of the way that we think in this is that if you were in this situation, how would you want to be treated in that? And actually put yourself in somebody else's shoes to do that. And I don't. It's not from a religious perspective or from any sort of other particularly moral perspective. It's just like the empathetic way of saying, well, if I was stressed in this environment, what would I want? Well, I'd want a couple of days off, or I'd want just a bit of space. So hey, if we can do it, let's do it. And thinking in that way.
It's advice I got from my marriage was say yes when you can say yes. Which is similar to kind of what you just said, is like, and I'm trying to think, even myself, when I'm working with my employees, do I always say yes when I can say yes? And how many times am I saying no just because I don't know if I should say yes? So kind of what you're saying is, look, if I can do it and they need time off, why are we keeping them there? Let's give it to them. Let's let them do what they need to do. And if it's a slow week, why do they need to suffer in the office or suffer at home in front of a screen? Like, no, go do something. Like, we got nothing going on. Get out there and do something. Which is just an interesting. I've never tied those two together. And if I could figure it out in my marriage, I could probably figure it out better at work, right? But just say yes when you could say yes is a great way to, I think, that's not in a book. So there it is.
I hadn't heard it said like that. I think that's great, Matt. So I'm going to use that as though it were in a book now. But
exactly.
I think one of the things I've definitely seen this in my career is that people often get into a management position, and then they think, well, actually, then I need to have some sort of controlling model around what's going on. And actually, no. If you just switch around, think in your head, switching around those roles. That guy was my manager. What would I want them to do? I think it puts a really good perspective on things.
And if we took a second of that in all areas of our life, right, to just sit there and go, all right, how would I want Richard to treat me like this, right? Or what did I do that I should have done differently that I could have probably stopped that from happening? Speaking in terms of I versus you is something I think we make mistakes on. All right, so this one's going to be tough too because you've already talked a lot about ways that you've given back and you've done good. This one sponsors actually the foundation that we started for pediatric rare diseases with our current situation, but helping do research almost as a startup model of doctors with great, amazing ideas. It's called Take Part, take-part.org. We love supporting them. We love doing this, and we love giving money to doctors who have great ideas and seeing the results that they're actually researching. So what are some things and some places that you do good with, give back to? How do you impact your community positively? And for you, just so you don't get an easy answer, it cannot be the companies you're serving, because I know you do a lot of stuff for a lot of good companies with a lot of good causes, right? So a little bit more challenging. So dig a little deeper for this one.
That's just really cruel because that was the easy answer for me, man. That was, So I think one of the things that we've done really since starting the business was trying to realize that we're just one part in a whole sort of sea of businesses and stuff. And actually, there's a lot of the best way to grow our business was probably to grow the whole environment, the ecosystem that we operate in.
Interesting.
And I think that's been our mentality from day one. So we're quite often involved in sponsoring activities. So we sponsor, for example, organizations that are trying to encourage young entrepreneurs to start to engage and talk about opportunities and then help them on that journey. So there's business-led things where we'll kind of sponsor those opportunities. There's also things like TEDx's and things where it's really trying to share knowledge in ways that can help people sort of engage in new ways of thinking and innovation in that. So that's the sort of business side of things. In terms of the pure, I guess there's another part is the how do we bring younger people into our industry in the right way and find that diversity of different ways of thinking and approaches in that. And we have the challenge in the UK in STEM subjects, pretty much like many places around the world, which is very few girls are really engaging in science, technology, in mass numbers.
Right.
There's lots of great people that are taking that choices, but if you compare it to male counterparts, it's there. So we've done things like, for example, getting running a week where we would invite students, and we do some which are just generally students of anybody to come in and do some work experience with us. But we also have run some which are specifically targeted at girls, and trying to say, come in, understand this world of technology and the opportunities, and understand the huge range of things that are available to you. It's not just sitting in a darkened room programming and typing on a keyboard. It's understanding, understanding what people are trying to create, what the business model might be, designing something, the visual impact of that, testing it with people. There's so many different elements of it that are opportunity that are there. And then there's some charitable stuff, of course, which we feel like we want to give back into charities in structure. And that's in different ways. For example, we try and do it where we can add the most value to it, and often that's in building things. So just this year we did there's a balls competition. So fully charitable competition where we built an app with another software company just up the road. Really nice collaboration with them to structure an app which allowed people to donate to the charities and engage with it. So
that's awesome. Cool stuff. All right. So, and for all the listeners, go check out the apps that they're working on. I did really throw you under the bus. I mean, they do so many interesting cause focused applications. So, Richard, sorry for throwing you in it, but I wasn't surprised. I figured you'd be able to dig something up with all the stuff you're doing. But all right, we talked a lot about all the good things you got going on. And I want to bring us back to reality a little bit, right? Because sometimes listeners at this point, they go, well, Richard's got it all figured out. He hires good people. He doesn't have the issues, blah, 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 blah. You know that's not true. I know that's not true. So we're going to pull some of them apart if you're okay with it. And just real quick, just dive into some issues that other people are hearing and how are you dealing with it? First issue is, how do you manage individuals' motivation around you, right? Especially with all the stuff that's going on. Right? And if you're having issues with it, honestly, I'd like to hear more of the struggles at this point, because I'm sure you have creative ways of solving it, and we can hear about that too. But just what are some things you're running into that you would love to solve or do better?
I think a lot of, we're no different to any other organization in that. You're absolutely right. So, but I think a lot of what we do is we work on, most of the work that people are doing is on projects. And the way we structure those projects is very, very fast iterations. And a lot of those fast iterations are, for example, we'll do a 2-week sprint on a project. So basically you're defining what you're going to do, you do it, and then at the end of it, you have a retrospective, all inside of a 2-week time frame. Wow. And that's really helpful because, it means, from a customer perspective, it means the risk profile of getting something wrong is only 2 weeks probably. Because you're delivering something just constantly with that. But what the great thing about understanding when people are struggling with things or if there's an issue that's from any individual is that we have retrospectives. So we'll kind of check in that 2-week period and say, well, what went really well? What can we improve? What are the actions that we take out of that and stuff? And that filters directly into the next 2-week sprint process. And I think that check-in and just questioning what can we do better, and from an individual basis, that opens an honesty and expecting that, I guess, in across the team. So people will say, we couldn't finish this feature because it took too long to do this. It's not a blame culture. It's just trying to understand that this problem existed. It took too long to think our way through it, or somebody couldn't do that. They didn't have the training to be able to do that. And actually, how do we remedy that?
Awesome. All right. Overwhelm, individuals' bandwidth. How are you managing with growing the way you are? Obviously, you're growing in personnel as well, but are any of your people feeling overwhelmed? And if so, what are you running into with that? What are you seeing right now in the workforce?
Yeah, we've come across that recently, and it was called the stress frog. So it's not a term that I'd heard, but the way it came up was that through this EOS process, we have what we call an issues list. And issues are things that are potential problems, but they're also opportunities as well. So basically, anybody in the company can see the company issues list, and they can put their own issues up on there. So one of them was, we need to deal with the stress frog that people sometimes have. And so every week we have a company, we call it a company level 10 meeting. It's part of this EOS process again, which is basically where we look at the things that have been upvoted in the issues list, and then we'll spend some time across the company. So we have representatives in from all parts of the organization to talk about and try and understand these things. And that, basically coming out of that that person raising that issue and being prepared to say, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed in this. A number of people would upvote that and say, well, actually, now we know organizationally, a lot of people are feeling the same thing. What are we going to do about it? And off the back of that came, a bunch of actions, which was, trying to find out more about, was this individuals? Was this across the whole company? If it is, are there specific projects? What can be done? So we kind of managed to break it down into individual pieces that we've hopefully got actions and started dealing with. So it's definitely a challenge. And also, some people love being overwhelmed. Other people hate it. So again, for me, this comes down to individuals and understanding the individuals in the organization. Some people love to have more than they can possibly achieve. There's things to juggle, having something when they're stuck on something, being able to move to something else. Other people just like to have the one thing that they're focused on and deliver. One thing that we built in the last year is something we call Skills Deck. So again, this is an internal product that we built, which basically looks at before we bring somebody on, when we offer them a job, we ask them to fill in the Skills Deck, and it's basically like it's a set of sliders, and the set of sliders give an indication of how you feel about something. There's no right or wrong answer with this stuff. It's kind of what skills do you have? What skills would you like to learn, etc. But there's also how do you learn? So, for example, one of those is do you like to work on lots of things at once or one thing at once? And there's a scale that people can do. And we have about 10 items that all have scales, which just indicate a personality profile that anybody can go and see in the business. So, if somebody is doing 3 things, but they really don't want to be because they like to focus on one, it's a way of just checking in and understanding that. And the mentor thing that we talked a little bit about drives the engagement and keeping that up to date.
That's not in a book. I haven't heard that in a book, so we got one there too. No, there's a lot, Richard. I appreciate what you're doing. I know your team does, based on their responses and the amount of them that have come through. And just love hearing a company like yours, just experiencing the benefits of taking care of your people, right? And look, you have the same challenges. Motivation's tough, structure's tough, employees are tough, personnel's tough, overwhelm's tough. But because you invested properly before, it makes those tough times not as tough. So I really appreciate it. How can people contact you if they're like, man, Richard, this was great information? How do they get a hold of you? How do they learn more from you?
Well, so please contact me. So rocketmakers.com is the website. Richard@rocketmakers.com is my email. Would love to hear from people and for me to learn from their experiences. I think, the great thing about, anybody being in our organization, whether it's somebody that's just joined or me as one of the co-founders and CEO, it's all a learning journey. And I really welcome, what you guys are doing around seeking these nuggets out that different organizations have, and hopefully I can learn from people in those ways. So please do get in touch.
We appreciate the humility and appreciate you sharing